but I'm delighted to welcome you to Lorraine Mace, Sears Author Chat. Lorraine, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'd love to. I'm the author of the D.I. Sterling series of books. I've got them here with me. Can I just talk about them briefly?
Yeah, please do, yeah.
Okay, right. At the moment, there's 4 in the series. The 5th one is coming out in February, and I'll tell you about that sort of once I've mentioned these. This is the first, Retriever of Souls. This features a serial killer who believes that he is acting because God has told him that he should do so. The detective is Detective Inspector Paolo Sterling, who I have to admit I am just a little bit in love with. The second in the series is Children in Chains. This crime here is people trafficking, including that of children, hence the title. It's not an easy read. My books fall under the category of hard-boiled crime, but the people who've read the book, the feedback that I've had is that I dealt with the subject matter with sensitivity. There's nothing gratuitous in there. The third, Injections of Insanity, features somebody who truly believed some years previously he was badly hurt by a group of people, and he is now extracting his revenge. The reason for the injections is because he kills them with insulin injections, not giving anything away there. The fourth, which came out earlier this year, is Rage and Retribution. And this is, again, all of my books are dual narrative. You get part coming from the antagonist, and the other point of view is that of Paolo, the detective. In Rage and Retribution, the antagonist is a vigilante type person who believes that too many rapists are getting away with their crimes and does something about it. Actually kidnaps, attacks, and rapes the rapists. The 5th book, which is coming out in February, is She Loves Me Not. And I think the best thing I can say about that is the antagonist is deranged, truly believes that certain people love him when they don't. He's a stalker and completely unhinged.
Wow. Those are really great titles. Did you come up with them yourself?
Well, it was a collaboration between me and the publisher.
Does the publisher design the covers as well?
Yes, I'm actually, I was with Accent Press for those covers. I'm now with Headline, and the covers, although they are great, they're going to get a bit of a makeover, because when the 5th book comes out, the cover is getting a complete new design, and then the other books will be updated to bring that in line.
So Sam's sending us the questions that we had from before the chat.
Okay.
And she says one of them is, do you have any contacts in the police who help you with your research?
I don't actually have contacts to help me with my research, but I do make sure that people who, ex-police officers, read the books and just tell me whether or not I've gone hopelessly wrong.
How do you know who did it when you start writing, or do you discover it as you write?
No, I always, that's one of the things I always know. I know who did it, I know why, and I know how they're going to get caught. The rest can be a little bit fluid, because very often when I'm writing, other people arrive, and they sort of arrive with a complete backstory, and slot in, and I've obviously had them in my head all the time, but didn't know that they were there.
So while we're on that sort of topic, do you plot the entire book out first, or do you just know like a few little basics before you begin?
Should I be really bad and lie and say, oh yeah, I plot the whole thing?
No, it's fine.
As I said, I know who the killer, or not necessarily the killer, whatever the crime is. I know who the antagonist is. I know what they're going to do, why they're going to do it. I know how they're going to get caught. I generally have at least 5 possible suspects that I know about before I start writing. But that's pretty much it, really. A lot of it comes up as I'm writing. I will be writing a scene and it just takes off and other things happen that I hadn't planned. So I suppose I'm sort of a mix of the two. I do have plots, but then they get expanded while I'm writing.
So one of the questions that came in, and I would like to ask this, is do you have a reference file to ensure your character is consistent through the series? I didn't ask it this time, but it's definitely one I normally do.
Sorry, just rephrase that for me so that I'll make sure I answer the right question.
Do you have like a character Bible, I call it? So like a reference file about your characters to make sure that you keep all their details through the series?
Yes, because I've got a team going through. The one thing that I don't do is age them, because there's quite a distance, between writing one book, getting it published, writing the next one, and getting it published. If let's say, for example, Paolo started off at the age of 35. By the time I sort of got book 5 and 6 published, he might be retired, So that's the only thing that I don't carry forward is their age. But other than that, yeah, I've got profile things that tell me all sorts of things about them, because otherwise I'd forget.
The questions are coming in thick and fast for you. The second part of that question was, do you read crime reports or watch crime programs to get inspiration for research?
Not for research, no, but sometimes, something will come up on the news and I think, yes, I could use that. Unfortunately, I'm of an age where if I don't write it down immediately, it's gone, So there are a lot of things that I've thought, oh, yeah, I could use that, and not. One of the frustrating things, when I wrote Children in Chains, because of there is a rock star in there who, from the outset, he's a horrible person. He is a paedophile. And my sister, when she read that, said, how did you know? How did you know? Because it actually came out at the same time as a big scandal broke in the UK about a rock star who had been pretty much doing what was in the book. And I had to explain to her, I'd written it 2 years before. There was, came out of my head. So sometimes the writing comes ahead of the stories, the news stories. But yes, I'm always on the lookout for a good plot.
There was another question that says, how do you choose your settings? And do you ever worry that the people in those places will be upset with you setting your crime there?
My crimes are set in a town called Bradchester, and I deliberately created a town for that very reason. But I've set it in an area that I know quite well because I used to live in the area. It's sort of near Bradford, not Bradford, sorry, near Rutland, Leicester, Stamford, Peterborough, in that sort of area. So although the town itself, Bradchester, is a made-up town, I very often have people turning up in the real places.
There's a really tricky question for you now. Who are your favourite crime writers?
You're right. That is a very, very tricky question. There are a lot of American crime writers that I absolutely love. I like Michael Connelly, John Lescroart, and now my mind has just gotten absolutely blank. UK, I love Val McDermott, Sheila Bugler, Chris Curran, who also writes as Abby Frost. Just trying to think. JJ Marsh, she's got a fabulous series as well. I actually read so many, it's difficult to sort of pull the names out.
Yeah, I don't think I could answer that question either.
No, it depends on the day. You know, it depends on which book I've just recently read. So, yeah. You know, the weird thing though, and I hate to say this because I do write hard-boiled crime. I actually prefer not to read hard-boiled crime. I think that's because my imagination is so vivid that when I'm reading it, I'm actually picturing it.
There's another question that came in from before that was, how do you do your research?
Well, I live in Spain, so all of my research is done online or by contacting people. In the book Injections of Insanity, my original idea was to actually have the people injected with embalming fluid. But fortunately, I was able to get in touch with a really nice doctor who I nicknamed Dr. Death because he gave me lots of help. And the very first thing he said was, you can't do that. That's not going to work. So, well, that's the end of that. And he came back in another email and said, but you could have them injected with insulin. So I owe the plot there to him because I was going off on a completely different tangent. So I do send out emails to professionals and say, look, please, this is what I'm thinking. Would it work? And generally, people are very, very kind. They come back with answers.
I think people like to help with things.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
There's a question here, it just says from Facebook user, that says, what did you do before writing?
How much time have we got? Lots of different things. I've lived in a number of countries. I've worked as an insurance agent, a beauty consultant, a barmaid. I was part owner of a restaurant. I was part owner of a cafe takeaway. Lots of different things. A lot of my day job is actually helping other writers. I run a critique and author mentoring service, but I'm also a Writers Bureau tutor. And I've been doing that for nearly 20 years.
You said you've lived in lots of in other countries. What other countries have you lived in?
I lived in South Africa for 15 years on the island of Gozo, which is part of the Maltese Islands. Then I lived back I left the UK when I was 24. It's a long time ago. South Africa, the island of Gozo. Then we went back to the UK for a couple of years. Then I lived in France, in the Dordogne and the Charente. Then I lived in Spain, in Almeria. Then I went back to France and I lived in the Lot-et-Garonne. And since 2012, I've been living here on the Costa del Sol.
Lovely. I'm going to hit you with all Sam's questions now because I know she was really excited about meeting you.
No, it would have been lovely to have you. Not that it's not lovely talking to you. It's lovely talking to you. I'm sure that Sam wanted to do the interview.
Yeah, she was ridiculously excited about it. So here are her questions. She says, tell us about your D.I. Paulo Sterling series.
Well, I think I've already sort of done.
Yeah, you've covered that.
Yeah, I think so.
She said, are gritty topics hard to write?
Some of them are. Some of them are very hard to write. Just to go back to the second book, Children in Chains, there were parts of that I sat and I cried as I was writing, and saying to myself, you idiot, you're making it up as you go along. But it's some of the stuff, it's quite hard because there are a lot of bad people in the world doing bad things, and that's what crime writers are writing about. We're writing about things that have happened, that could happen, that do happen. I think if you can feel what your characters are going through, then yes, it's difficult.
Is there any topics that you wouldn't write about?
Yes. I've got a fetish about eyes, in that there is no way anybody in my books is ever going to have anything done to their eyes, ever. They're safe. About the only topic.
Wow.
I know, weird, isn't it? Well, there you go.
No, I get it. It's the only thing that I'm a science teacher, so I study science, and the only thing that's ever made me slightly queasy doing biology was dissecting an eye. Yeah,
no. I have difficulty even putting eye drops in my own eyes. And I think it was, I probably got the wrong author. I think it was it Karen Carver? It was years ago. My daughter recommended a book. She said, Mum, you'll love this, you'll love this. And she reads a lot of crime, and actually introduced me to a lot of good crime writers. And I thought, okay, she must be right. And it was pre-Kindle days, so, you know, I had the paperback copy. And the killer, or the bad person, I didn't even read enough of the book to find out if he killed anybody, stitched up their eyelids. And I read that and I put the book down, and that's it. I just couldn't. I could not read on because it just gave me heebie-jeebies.
Someone here asked, which of your books has been the hardest to write?
The second one, Children in Chains. Yeah.
Yeah. And they also said, are you happy with all of your books?
I think so. I think all authors probably look at the first book in a series and think, I could have done better with that. But no, I'm happy with them.
So Sam says she first remembers discovering you in a writing magazine.
Yes, I write for two writing magazines. I do a humour column for Writing Magazine in the UK. I've been doing that for about 12 years. I write notes from the margin, which is a funny look at a writer's life. You know, it's not at all glamorous. We think it is, but it's not. So that column is about that. And I'm the head judge for the monthly fiction competition for Writers Forum. So I write two columns for Writers Forum. One is the competition roundup, explaining why I chose the winners for that month. And the other is a writer's workshop. And that's taking, with permission obviously, one of the entries and explaining why it wasn't shortlisted and what the author could have done to improve the story.
That sounds really useful.
Yeah, I get lots of emails from about that particular column.
Sam also says you co-authored the ABC checklist. Do you have any plans to collaborate on a book again?
No, and that's not because I didn't enjoy collaborating. Maureen, Vincent Northam and I worked on that together, and it was an absolute joy. But it's non-fiction, and I don't write, other than the magazine articles, I don't write non-fiction. And I cannot imagine, I know that there are some very successful collaborations, Nikki French being one of them. Oh, that's one of my authors that I like. But I just couldn't picture handing over part of my work and saying, okay, well, you know, you do the next bit, or it just wouldn't work. For me, obviously it does work for others.
She also wants to ask you her favourite question, which is what have been your most memorable moments so far as an author?
It would have to be holding my first ever book. Getting an email from a man who had read Rage and Retribution and saying, I've just read the first chapter of your book and you made my eyes water. Because the men are the victims in that book. What else? Meeting fans, that is always brilliant. Particularly when one of them said, because of something that I did in a book, which I can't go into, because it's a spoiler, that she wanted to do a misery on me.
Oh dear. Sam says, how do you write and where do you write?
Okay, I'm in my office right now. How do I write? I write directly Word document. I don't use any of the programs. I did try to get to grips with one of them, but I just thought, you know, by the time I've learned how to do this, I could have written the book. So I write using a basic Word program. When I'm ready to edit, I print it out and use a basic red pen. And that's it. Oh, but notes. I make notes by hand on scraps of paper, and they are all over the place. I'm not at all neat and tidy when it comes to keeping notes.
There's a question here from Facebook user, and it's one of the ones I would have asked, which is, will you write any more books for children? And tell us a little bit about your books for children.
Okay, now, the very first book I ever wrote was a book for children, for the 8 to 12-year-olds. It's called Vlad the Inhaler. Vlad is 11 years old. He is part vampire and part human. His mother is human, his father is a vampire, so that makes him a hupire. He is vegetarian, scared of the dark, can't turn into a bat. Favourite food is peaches, and he's just a very lonely child because the humans don't like him because he's part vampire. Vampires don't like him because he's part human. But he's got a very loving family home. And then one day his parents disappear and his evil vampire relatives come swooping into the castle and take it over. And they torture him and he manages to escape and has lots of quite frightening adventures. There's lots of black humour in there. And eventually he has to save the day and save the village and get rid of the relatives. It's part of a trilogy. I have written the second book. It was published. The first two books were published. Unfortunately, the publisher in America went bang. So I got my rights back. I self-published the first one, and I will probably do the same with the second one because it's already written and it's been edited and it's ready to go. And in the second one, Vlad discovers, can't tell you that because it's a spoiler. He has other problems to deal with. Let's leave it at that.
Please republish the second one, because I read this when we knew you were coming up for an author chat, and it's fabulous.
Oh, really? You read it?
I read Vlad. I loved him. He was great.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I have to say, I love Vlad. And as I said, that was the first book I ever wrote. So going back a long, long time. And you were asking just now about exciting moments in my life. When Vlad was picked up by the American publisher, I was absolutely overjoyed. And it just didn't work out, and I was really quite devastated. But anyway, the second book is ready to go. Just for you, I'm going to self-publish it.
Wonderful. And will you write the third?
Yes. If I self-publish the second, I will have to, because you've got to complete the trilogy.
Yeah, you do. Sam says, what led you to becoming a competition judge, and what advice do you have for people entering writing competitions?
Okay. I became a competition judge a long time ago, when somebody asked if I would. I was part of a writers group, and somebody asked would I judge a competition that they were putting together. By the time that happened, I was already a Writers Bureau tutor. So I was used to reading other people's work and evaluating it. And it just sort of grew from there. You know, I enjoy reading short stories, and there are very few short stories places now to get short stories published. So it's a way of getting to know other authors. I just enjoy it.
There's another one from Sam. She says, any plans for other series or standalones?
I do have, yes, I do have a standalone planned. It's a psychological thriller, sort of a stalker. I don't really want to say too much more about it, but it is going to be very, very creepy. Not psychological, not supernaturally creepy. Creepy from the point of view of not knowing who is the good person and who isn't. I'm really excited about this one.
Oh, it sounds excellent. There's one from Facebook user, no name, saying, will you ever write a book that is set in Spain?
A long time ago, I came up with the idea of a series set in Spain, cozy crime. Nothing to do with the police. An ex-journalist who sort of stumbles onto one of the criminals that she knows is wanted in the UK, and tries to do something about it and ends up getting kidnapped. And it's one of those things, if I ever get time, then yes. But there are so many things that I still have to write. I'm busy writing book 6 in the Paolo series. So that has to be done. And then I want to write my standalone. And the third Vlad book. You know, there are so many hours in the day.
Sam also asked, has the recent halt in magazines, etc., being printed made it harder for freelancers to break into the writing market?
I can't answer for lots of magazines. The ones that I write for, Writing Magazine never stopped. It just kept going. Writers Forum had, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 month hiatus, but it's now back published every month. I think, yes, it has, because there will be magazines with smaller circulation that will go to the wall, unfortunately. So yes, I think it is going to make it much more difficult to get in. And obviously those who were writing for the smaller magazines that will fold, sadly, they're going to be also looking for work, and they're going to have clips and a back catalogue they'll jump to the front of the queue, probably. I didn't mean to be depressing there, but I would rather give an honest answer.
No, and I think that's what people wanted when they asked that question. So you started off writing Vlad. What drew you from Vlad to crime?
It's my preferred reading. I mean, I read just about anything, but I mostly enjoy crime. And I wasn't sure. Vlad was a story that came to me from the heart and I really wanted to write, but I never intended to be a children's author. And then Paolo sort of popped into my head one day. A little bit of my own background. I'm from an Italian family way back when. And I don't know, Paolo just sort of popped in and refused to leave until I wrote about him. So that's it, I had to write. And the first book it wasn't intended to be a series. It was intended to be a standalone. It was just meant to be the one book. And now 4.5 books later, because the 5th one is coming out in February, 5.5 books later, because 5th one's out in February and the 6th one is half written. It's a series, but it wasn't my intention.
Do you have an end in sight for your series?
I do, but I will probably leave it open-ended. I will make an ending, but I will leave it slightly open just in case in 5 years' time I want to write another one. Dennis Lehane, that's the author I was trying to think of. I love his couple that run through a series. And what's reminded me now, he wrote the series of these 2 private detectives, and it was absolutely brilliant, but then he wrote lots of standalone. And I think about 10 years later, he brought them back. And that made me think, you need to leave a door open just in case. So yes, I do have an end to the series in mind, but he's not going to die, just in case. Yeah. Because I'm not going to do Patrick Duffy and bring him back in a shower in the middle of Dallas, if anybody remembers that.
No, I remember that.
Yeah. Everybody who ever watched it must remember that, because it was just so far-fetched. So I won't do that.
I think I don't think I watched it, but I remember hearing about it. There's another Facebook user question. It says, what are your top tips for someone who wants to write a crime book?
Right. First of all, make sure that what you plan is feasible. It would be very easy to get carried away and think, oh, I'm going to have the criminal do this, I'm going to have the criminal do that. It has to be credible. Every page has to be credible. So you can't have superhuman strength. If you've got to take a body from point A to point B, you've got to find a way that the person who's taking that body can do it. In one of my books, a body had to be moved, and I took it step by step into a wheelbarrow. No, I don't mean the body step by step, but the body was on a table, it had to slide off the table, it had to land in the wheelbarrow. Of course, it didn't land nicely in the wheel. You know, you've got to think all the time, is this credible? Try to come up with ideas that haven't been used to death. Try to stop murdering women, because, you know, the women are, it seems in most crime novels, women are victims. Which is why in Rage and Retribution, all the victims are male. make sure you do your research, make sure your detectives are credible in what they do and how they act and how they interact. Try to avoid stereotypes. There are too many detectives that are alcoholics, heavy smokers, divorced, sleeping in their car, always hungover. Give them a different slant. Is that okay?
Those are excellent. Really good tips. Sam wanted to know, is there any experiences that you've had that have been used in a book?
Yes. In the first book, there's instances of domestic abuse, domestic violence. When I lived in South Africa, I did a rape crisis course and I counselled rape victims. And from there, I moved on to counselling in a refuge for battered women. And I used the experience, not the women's experiences, but my own experience of how I felt, what I learned. That comes into book one. I use that because it's ground that I know.
She also asked, can members order signed copies of books from you?
Yes, if they go on to my website, which is www.lorrainemace.com.
I'll drop it in the group after.
Send me an email, and yes, with the greatest of pleasure, we can organise that.
Fabulous. She says, what events are you looking forward to once everything opens up again?
I had a really great event lined up. One of the international banks here, I was going to give a talk on being a crime writer, how I find my ideas, the writing process, the whole thing. And they had the hall was fully booked, and it was due to take place the week before Spain went into complete lockdown. And by that stage, it was, people were already cancelling. So that I would really love to do. I was very much looking forward to that. I also want to go to the UK, visit some libraries, do some talks there. Just all the normal things that authors do, to promote their books and talk to their readers.
So one of my favourite questions when I do an author chat is, would you ever make a graphic novel of one of your books?
I might make a graphic novel of Vlad, but not of the crime novels. No.
What are the differences in writing something for children like Vlad than to writing a crime novel?
No, I don't. Like Vlad, I hope you will agree. I don't talk down to children.
No, you don't.
I expect them to understand what's going on, and if they don't understand, there's generally a parent there, who could say, explain. But no, for me, everything is about character. If the characters are believable, the story will be believable. So I tend to, when I'm writing from the point of view of a criminal, I become that criminal. I don't think, what would he or she do? I'm actually doing it in my head. And that's exactly the same when I'm writing for children. I am Vlad. Everything that happens to Vlad happens to me as I'm writing. So I don't think there is any difference really, for me anyway. So Vlad's not as violent as the crime novel.
No, thankfully.
Oh, there is some violence in there, I know.
What's your favourite relationship that you've written?
Oh, that's a tricky one. Probably between Paolo and his ex-wife, because it's so complex. This is a couple who met when they were at school. They fell in love at the age of 17, and it wasn't a boy-girl love. It was a deep, meaningful, lasting love that should have lasted forever. But then their eldest daughter was killed in a deliberate hit and run that was actually intended for Paolo. And Lydia needed Paolo. She needed him to be there for her. He couldn't do that. He actually retreated entirely into himself. And it caused the relationship to disintegrate completely. She couldn't forgive him for leaving her to deal with her grief on her own. He couldn't forgive himself for doing that. And she became quite vicious towards him. But they love each other still. That is never, ever going to go away. He will never love anybody as much as he loves her. She will never love anybody as much as she loves him. But and throughout the series, they come together, they go apart, they come together, they go apart. But it's a love that cannot ever be destroyed, but they just can't live together. So yeah, that's my favourite relationship.
Do you know, I've not read your crime books, but after this chat, I'm going to be on Amazon. Sam says, did you ever want to be anything other than a writer?
I wanted to be a singer, but the problem is I can't sing. No, seriously, if I sing, everybody says, oh, please don't. But I do sing in the car. Turn the music up and I sing in the car when I'm driving. But I have probably the worst voice in the world. But yeah, that's what I wanted to do.
And Sam also asks, are there any authors who you buy every release from?
Yes, Harlan Coben. The moment it comes out, I buy it. John Musgrower, the moment it comes out, I buy it. Dennis Lehane, it depends. I'm not that keen on some of his books, but yeah, he's also on my list. The authors I mentioned earlier, but yeah, Harlan Coben, always. I get very excited when I know there's a new book out from him.
My list of those is extensive.
Yes.
Two authors you buy every release from. She's also asked, Sam did, are you working on anything else alongside writing book 5? Do you write things at the same time as each other?
No, well, the children's books, yes, but no, at the moment I'm concentrating on the crime novels. I want to get book 6 finished. I've given myself a deadline for that, which is midway through next month. And the moment I finish that, I will be starting on the standalone.
So do you give yourself any break between finishing one and starting another?
No, not usually. Well, the thing is, when I say I've finished the book 6, that's only the first draft. I won't look at that again for about another 3 or 4 weeks, and then I'll print it out and give it probably change so much and rip it to pieces and put it back together again. And then it will go back on the computer and I won't look at it again for another month, and I will just keep doing that until I'm happy with it. But in the meantime, I'm writing something else.
Sam says, what resources would you recommend for new writers?
Brand new writers, buy Stephen King's book on writing. I think it is one of the best resources that any new writer can have on their desk. Yeah, I think that's probably the only one that I would recommend. And read a lot, obviously.
Yeah, especially in the genre you want to write in.
Yes, yes. You've frozen.
Have I? Sorry.
Oh, no, it's all right, back again now.
Do you read all your reviews?
My reviews?
Yeah.
Did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I do, yes. And I get a ridiculous amount of joy from somebody who says, yay, I love your books. I get really excited by that. I tend, if I get sort of somebody who says, well, yeah, it was okay, well, then that's fine. You know, you can't appeal to everybody. I'm touching wood all over the place here. I've only ever had one horrible review, and that was by somebody who said, I can't understand what all of these 4- and 5-star reviews are about because it was full of violence and I didn't enjoy it. It's fair enough.
Well, things that are full of violence aren't for everybody, are they?
No, exactly. But, you know, the blurb does point out that this is hard-boiled crime. But anyway, yeah, I'm very lucky, which is why I've been touching wood all over the place. But so far, that's the only one. I'll probably wake up tomorrow now and there'll be half a dozen.
No, not from our members. They're too nice. Sam says, have you watched any shows by Harlan Coben? Have you watched any of the adaptations?
No, I'm a bit, I like to have my own picture in my head of what people look like and how they're going to act. I really like Michael Connelly's Bosch books. And I watched the first series on Netflix, I think it was, and it annoyed me because they put a couple of books together and things happened out of sequence, and I'd rather just read. I don't mind watching something that's an adaptation from a book that I haven't read, but if I've read, then no, I don't want to watch.
That's fair enough. We've got 5 minutes left.
Okay.
That's just flown by. I know we had a few problems at the start. We've got one more question or so, and then we'll have a recap of your books.
Okay.
So Sam says, how do you celebrate each publication?
I celebrate it, first of all, by going out with my partner. We have a meal, we sort of celebrate. I tend to celebrate more when I get an acceptance than the publication. When I get an acceptance, particularly if I'm not expecting one, I tend to act like a total idiot, burst into tears, and say, well, they actually like it, they like it. Seriously, that's what I do.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wow. Do you want to give us a recap of your books?
I will, I'd love to. Okay, right. Detective Inspector Paolo Sterling. He goes through Retriever of Souls, where he is tracking down a serial killer who genuinely believes that God is directing his actions. Children in Chains. It's not an easy read, but I do deal with the subject sensitively. It's people trafficking and child trafficking. Injections of Insanity. This is also a serial killer, but a serial killer who is actually out for revenge against 6 specific people for a particular reason. And Rage and Retribution, this is told partly from the point of view of a vigilante who believes that men who commit rapes and get away with it have to be held to account. And this person is doing it in a particularly vicious way. And then book 5, which is coming out in February, which is She Loves Me Not, is partly told from the point of view of a stalker who is looking for love and believes that the person that he loves him, even though she doesn't.
Thanks so much for coming on and doing this interview. I'm very sorry about the problems.
Oh, no,
we had.
Really, I have thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for having me. It was right.
And please come back and be interviewed by Sam again, because she would absolutely love to host you for an hour.
I would love that. Maybe when book 5 comes out, we can organise something then.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it, and the time has just flown.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? But it's been great.